Hello, my name's Joel Addis, and this is my presentation on our first module. I currently work as an elementary special education teacher in Derby, Kansas at El Paso Elementary. And I've worked there for a little under 10 years and have worked as a teacher in a couple of other buildings in the district prior to that. In addition, I've worked for the district for close to 20 years. And during that time, in addition to being a teacher, I've also been a special education paraprofessional. I've been a substitute teacher, and I've been a part-time custodian in the summers. In addition to teaching in my building, which involves working with approximately 30 students with identified exceptionalities, and a team of 6 paras in order to meet their needs across the school setting. I also am a leader in my district through different committees and the work that I do on them. I've chaired our district special education advisory council for close to 10 years. I've also served on our district benefits committee, our calendar committee, and this year had the pleasure of serving on our Strategy 3 committee, which our district does 5 areas for targeted growth, and Strategy 3 focuses on personnel. This year, due just to the specific nature of this year, I also had the pleasure of serving on our district's Return to Learn committee, which actually began meeting in March of 2020 and focused on what learning would look like through the remainder of last school year or the year before last, and then also just through last school year as well in our different learning modes. I also served this year on our district's gating committee, which met bi-weekly to look at our COVID-related numbers in our area and in our buildings and determine the mode of learning for the next 2 weeks. In addition to my work as an educator, I'm also president of our local Teachers Association, DNEA. And in that capacity, I work to lead an organization of a little over 250 members. I work closely with an executive board to develop a vision and a goal for our association, and then work in collaboration with district administration to basically be a voice for teachers and therefore be a voice for students. It's something I'm passionate about, and I have seen the benefit both to teachers, to students, but then also for myself and just the leadership opportunities it's given me. And just a little about my family. I've been married 16 years to my wife, Angela, and she is an elementary music teacher. She will be teaching 5th grade band in Hayesville Public Schools next year. And we have 3 sons. Our oldest son, Wilson, is going to be in 6th grade this upcoming school year. Our second middle son, Henry, will be in 3rd grade, and our youngest, Oscar, will be in 1st grade. This is a picture of us at Easter. So when I looked at the resources and really tried to synthesize them into a semi-brief statement about supporting staff and evaluations, this is what I came on. And really, it just came back to me to developing a positive culture. And that doing that, a culture that encourages achievement and staff success, it's not a quick fix. It's not something that's done overnight. A culture that encourages student achievement and staff success is a result of intentional collaborative work on the part of that educational leader to ensure that staff and students contribute to and then benefit from a building's culture. And I do really believe that collaboration is key. Some of the most effective administrators I've worked for really brought a team view to the building that I was in at the time. And I have seen that as a positive. So I looked at each kind of individual area that a professional culture can support, and then went into the resources and targeted some things that successful educational leaders can do to support those specific goals through developing a professional culture. And with well-being, I really feel like this school year, the school year that just ended, more than any, has really driven home the importance of taking care of yourself while you're taking care of your students and your colleagues, making sure that you're aware of how you're feeling emotionally and physically, and just that you're taking those steps to be well. Just it's a basic thing that I think so many of us in education are quickly to forget or throw away, but yet by the simple act of taking care of ourselves, we are making ourselves better educators and being more effective for our students. So, to support that, educational leaders need to create and sustain a positive work culture that supports educators' well being. They need to exhibit transparency to build trust, celebrate individual and collective wins as a staff. And I think that's really important. We need to encourage educators to operate as a team in order to encourage strong peer relationships. We need to demonstrate an openness to discuss the impact of this current teaching environment and the pressure it brings on our mental health. We need to display mindfulness and an awareness of ourselves and others, and we need to encourage that in other educators. We need to develop structures that will encourage educators to adopt an appropriate work-life balance. We need to listen to our staff as they process the realities of working with student populations with complex needs. As a special education teacher, that's a lot of what I do. And the administrators and the colleagues that I worked with who I felt were really concerned about my well-being were the ones that would take a moment after a behavioral event to process that event with me. Educational leaders need to survey staff on a regular basis to determine their needs. They need to support staff as they take steps to address their own well-being, and they need to lead by example. I think it's really hard as an educator to not be expected to respond to an email late at night when you have an administrator who is sending those out. And so the next area that I really wanted to focus on is retention, because I think that that culture of well-being really flows into a professional culture that supports retention. And to do that, educational leaders need to work to make a positive impact on educators' well-being, which then leads to that positive impact on teacher retention. Educational leaders need to communicate consistently with educators to assess the climate and culture of the building. Demonstrate flexibility to adjust and make improvements based on the needs of those educators, and then develop and maintain a culture that cultivates a positive environment. One of the resources made the comment that, essentially you just want to go work at a place that you want to go work at. You want to be there. And I think that's something that an administrator can play a critical role in doing. And we want to encourage educators to involve themselves in the school community. And that can be by sponsoring student activities or just collaborating with their peers on building level committees, and really just increasing that buy-in into the building, and then also the relationship that those teachers have with students. Because I think relationships are key. And if you have a good relationship with a student, even if it's a student who exhibits some pretty extreme behavior, it's going to be easier to teach them content. We need to provide educators opportunities for professional growth and development, and that either needs to be inside our building at scheduled in-services, or if a teacher has something that they're passionate about that will benefit the building and their students, then they need to be able to go outside of their building to professional development on that topic. And that really then leads into school improvement and that professional development piece. And in that, educational leaders need to collaborate with educators to develop professional growth plans that align with school and district goals, vision, and mission. We need to plan and implement relevant, data-based professional development opportunities for all educators in their building. And really, when we do that, we need to be data driven, but also we need to be culture driven, specifically looking at the needs of our students, the needs of our educators, and the needs of our community. And even in a town the size of Derby, when I look at our 9 elementary schools, um, what would be effective building culture based professional development at one of our elementaries that is in a more affluent neighborhood is not going to be the same at one of our elementaries, like the one that I teach at, that has a lower overall SES rating. We also need to establish systems that encourage educators to develop their professional capacity to the point where students demonstrate increased achievement and mastery of content. And that can look a lot of different ways. That can be collaborative relationships with peers, that can be mentoring systems and structures, coaching opportunities, peer observations, and then even building into that, informal and formal evaluation piece and walkthroughs. Just that all, those are all options when looking at that. Because we know that as we improve our capacity as a building and as educators, we're going to also support student learning. And in doing that, educational leaders can prioritize student achievement by working to develop the effectiveness of educators, improve student performance by developing a culture that encourages all stakeholders to serve as learning leaders. We want to serve as the instructional leaders of the school, and as educational leaders, we need to be available to provide that assistance and direction in instruction, assessment, and management of behavior. It's also a positive thing to collaborate with building level teams to review student data and develop appropriate instructional interventions. I've had the opportunity to serve on our building's positive intervention team, our multi-tiered systems of support team for the last 5 years. And in doing so, have really been able to take some deep dives into student data and a specific student situation, and collaborate with some fairly excellent peers, honestly, to come up with some both academic and non-academic interventions to help students be successful. I'm really proud of that work that we've done. So again, though, just before I move on to this piece, that just kind of brings me back to my main point, where I feel like all of these things don't just happen. They're a result of intentional action and taking a step back, taking a look at the situation, collaborating with educators and colleagues in a building or district, and then developing a plan of action and taking it. So when I look at the standard correlation for this assignment, these resources increased my knowledge of supervision and evaluation related to each area. It gave me new information on how these areas work together to create a building culture that will cultivate student and educator success by focusing on those different areas: building improvement, retaining educators, student learning, and the well-being of all. This assignment was relevant to my learning because, honestly, the information in these resources aligned with my experiences in supporting the educational success of students and adults. I have had the opportunity to observe several building principals, association leaders, district administrators, and the ones who, in my opinion, have been successful in supporting staff and students are the ones who focus on improving educators and students' capacity and working to make sure that their well-being is a priority, wanting to make sure that people know that they are taken care of. And then, in terms of a reflection, as a future educational leader, and honestly, as a current educational leader, it was really refreshing and helpful to just have some additional resources to read and maybe some viewpoints that I hadn't necessarily considered prior to this. But then essentially, the goal as a building leader, as an association leader, as a team leader, as someone who works with a group of paras, the goal is to build a positive culture that focuses on the well-being of students and staff, improving that capacity, keeping your staff, because we know that experience really can lead to excellence. And then also learning, and the goal of just supporting all students and staff. And I want to close out with my references. And I really look forward to getting to know you through your presentations and feedback this month. Thanks.